Relationships aren't always sunshine and rainbows. Just like in nature, you can't have rainbows without a little rain.
Journey with us,
Shani Goodson
and Dr. Sunjata as we share stories and insights about our thriving, unconventional love life and our unique take on relationships and consensual non-monogamy. What's happening, y'all?
Hey.
Welcome back to another episode of SunShan and Rainbows.
Welcome back.
So happy to be with you all once again. And guess what, y'all? We're excited because we got another banger for y'all. We got another guest, another special guest that we're excited to introduce you all to. Miss Evita Lavitaloca Black.
Hi.
What's going on, Evita? How you doing?
Hello. I am so happy to be here. This is my first time meeting Shani. So hello, Shani.
I know, right? We've
Right.
only met virtually. I mean, we still are
Right.
meeting virtually, but this is better.
Yeah. So, but I'm very excited to talk to you both and very happy to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
Oh my goodness. We're so happy that you could be with us. And I want to go ahead and introduce you based on how you share what you do in our space in this love style. So Evita is a personal coach specializing in non-monogamy, a polyamory educator, speaker, and teacher. And a little bit later, we're going to dive into all the ways that Evita expresses herself and helps so many others through that work.
And how you can access the gems that she be dropping. We're going to get into that later as well. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's get to know you some. Like, I'm wondering, where do you live currently? Where are you from?
So I reside in Jersey City, New Jersey, which is where I'm from. I was born and raised here.
Okay.
I left at 17 when I joined the military. I was in the Navy for 4 years. I got stationed in San Diego, California. And I met my now ex-husband out in California. And so I spent 21 years living in California. I was married, had kids. My ex-husband and I separated in 2020. And in 2021, I moved back over here to sort of reorient myself post-divorce. And so now I'm back in Jersey City. And so I'm like literally in the like childhood home, that I grew up being in my aunt's home. And so yeah, I have 3 children. They're in California with their dad. They're all teens, so they're almost adults. But we've been non-monogamous for like most of their life. So at this point, we've been non-monogamous longer than we were monogamous. So they probably don't even remember, when mom and dad were monogamous because they were really young when we started. And so yeah, I'm queer as hell, black as hell. And I'm an agender individual. I work, so by day, I work in HIV prevention. So I work for an organization that assists folks living with HIV, and we do a lot of HIV lobbying and care services and prevention services and harm reduction services and things of that
Oh, that's
nature. So
awesome.
I'm very fortunate, yeah, to have a job that I'm allowed to, work towards like what I want to see in the world
Yeah.
by way of the work that I do.
Love it.
And then by night I moonlight as a polyamory content creator, educator, speaker, teacher, author,
Yes.
activist in some ways, and so yeah.
So how's it been being back on the East Coast after being on the West Coast for so long?
I wish I could be like, oh my God, it's been great. I don't like it. I'm a Cali girl. I really am. It's way too urban for me. I like having access to green spaces and hiking, and it's very
Yeah.
concrete jungle, and the energy out here is very different. So I always feel like everybody. I'm like, I feel like everybody should smoke more weed. Like I'm like, you guys are like so like on edge all the time,
I mean, I
and
can imagine being
California's a
in
lot more
Cali.
chill.
Yeah.
So I like when I first moved to California from living out here all of my life, I was like, oh my God, it's so slow. This is horrible. But after living there for 20 years and then moving back over here, I'm like, oh my God, everybody's in a rush. There's so much
Right.
noise. Like, I'm like, everybody needs to calm down. So it's very funny.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much a Cali girl and definitely prefer the West Coast to the East Coast. But I do like that where I live is blackety black. There's so much black culture. There's so many different kinds of black people. So the entire diaspora
Yeah.
is here and it's present here. And so that part I do enjoy. I remember when I first moved here, like I felt like Kimmy Schmidt because I was just walking down the street, like just smiling at all the black faces that I could see, and like everybody's like, "What's wrong with you?" Because I'm just like, "It's a black person." Wow, I was really excited about
Nice,
that. So I
nice.
do enjoy that, but I'm definitely much more of a West Coast girly. I feel like.
Got you. Well,
I can relate to all of that. You
yeah,
know, I'm from New York, and every time I
I'm
go
from
back,
Philly.
I'm like, I can't live here. I just can't come back here. I can't. So I really get all of that.
Yeah.
So much of what you said relatable. I split with my husband in 2020. You know, I moved in 2021. Not back to where I'm from though, because like I said, I'm from New York, and I just can't. But I also can definitely relate to the hey black person. You know, hey black people street. Like you get so excited when you haven't seen some brown faces in a long time and you're like, oh, I forgot y'all so beautiful, y'all so pretty. So I really I love that. And you said you're in your like childhood home. Is it like bringing up memories, you know? Like what kind of memories do you have of relationships growing up? Like what kind of things did you see adults doing in your life as far as their relationships?
So it's interesting because I live in my aunt's home. And she was like, she had like a 40-year marriage, like, her and her husband, like, they death separated them. She
Mm,
never got with anyone else after he died. It was a very healthy relationship from what I could see at least.
Hmm.
And but it was a very stark contrast to what was going on in my own home,
mm,
which my dad was very abusive. My mom's relationship with my father was incredibly unhealthy. And that was largely like the relationship experience for like most of my friends. Like I think I had one friend actually that like had like a mom and a dad that were like together, and I think even then it was her stepdad. It wasn't like her biological father, but like they were like together. They were very in love. It was like a healthy relationship. She stayed with him until he died. And then I don't think she ever got with anyone else after that. And then she passed away. And she was like the one friend that I had that had like an intact family. But everyone else, it was a lot of, single parent households, a lot of dysfunction. My own dating history was, not that great. And so yeah, and so it was kind of a stark contrast. So being back here has been interesting because so much of my, I remember there was a time when I thought the sun rose and set on Jersey City, and it was like the best place in the world to me. And it was like, the entire world to me. And then I joined the military and I traveled the world and moved to California. And then I'm coming back and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought the sun rose and set on this place. Like, this is so
Yeah.
wild to me.
so true.
Yeah. And having to connect to like what my adult appreciation is of this place has been challenging actually to find for some of the reasons that I named
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so coming back to my like childhood home, especially after such a major like life loss of like losing my marriage, because me and my husband were married for like 15, 16, almost 20 years.
Hmm.
And so going to that and then coming back to my home of origin and kind of coming back to the foundation and like having to rebuild and like who am I now?
Mm.
It's been a very illuminating and interesting journey.
Whew.
I'm gonna
I can
say for
imagine. I
sure.
can imagine. So we're thinking about some of those childhood memories and the different relationships that you experienced or saw within your family or your neighborhood. How have any of those memories do you, or let me say this, do you feel like any of those memories have impacted your path to consensual non-monogamy or polyamory in any way?
Um, Maybe I would have to say how much unhappiness and like discomfort we endure in relationships just for the sake of having.
Mm.
And probably like I would say maybe getting to the place of going like you got one life, it's super fucking short. And so you might as well be in relationships that are like authentic to what you genuinely want.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we do so much, people do so much contorting and
Mm-hmm.
twisting and like, cutting themselves off, just to remain in connection with people, just for it to end up ending,
Right.
at some point. And so I think I would probably say that I'm just not interested in doing that anymore. Even, if it means that maybe, sometimes I end up lonelier than I would like to be at different times, or, sort of like holding out for the standards or the ideals that I want. But if I would have to say that it impacted it in any way, is it just does no one any favors, being inauthentic and miserable,
Yes.
in a relationship just for the sake of saying that you have something, or you're together with someone. Like, I just saw a lot of miserableness,
Yeah.
and people like being in relationships. I'm like, this clearly doesn't work for you. Clearly you're not happy. Clearly you're not enjoying your experience with this person,
Yeah.
but you're staying here, just for, like I said, just for the sake of having, just for the sake of being in relationship.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so if I had to say what impacted anyway, it's if I'm gonna be with people, I want to be authentic to like what I genuinely want to share with that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And how I genuinely want to be in relationships with people.
Okay.
Yeah, that really resonates, especially the part about like, twisting yourself and contorting, and how it really does no one any favors, including the person who may not even know that you're miserable, because you should really like let that person go experience the love that they really should be getting, not your, miserable love. So
Yeah.
so that really, really resonated.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I want to know, how was your early dating life, like in your teens and before you got married? Like, did you know that you were non-monogamous or polyamorous way back then?
So that's really funny. Monogamy was always a struggle for me, but at the
Mhm.
time, there was no options, so it was just, I must be with the wrong person,
Okay.
that kind of thing. But monogamy was always a struggle for me. Even as a teenager, it was always a struggle for me. I would cheat on my boyfriends. I never found that being with someone meant that I didn't want to be with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so monogamy was always a struggle. It was
Okay.
always a challenge. I
Mhm.
just didn't know that there were any other options. And obviously it came with, you always think, well, I always tell people, when you think about being monogamous, you always think about you being monogamous. You really don't think about your partner being monogamous, which is something you really need to think about. Most of the time it's like, oh, I want other people. It's like, okay, but this other person is going to want other people too. So how do you feel about that?
Right, right.
But I very much, never felt like I got with a person and just, wanted to forsake all others. Like, I always would develop crushes on people.
Mm.
I would have people that I would want to interact with. Like I said, I was unfaithful in several relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, monogamy was always a struggle, always, always a struggle. And then once I found out about non-monogamy, it was like, oh, there's an option here.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Okay.
So how did you find out about non-monogamy and polyamory? Like,
Ooh,
how'd you get there?
how did we get there? Um, it was my queerness, actually. So I was monogamously married to a man. That relationship overall was good, but had periods of being very unsatisfying and unfulfilling. Because we were very incompatible. We were, honestly, that we lasted as long as we did is a triumph, okay, to the human spirit. And then also just, we're both decent individuals and we both genuinely liked each other. We just probably shouldn't have been married.
Right.
And but I had this knowing that I was queer since I was a teenager, and just did not have any real opportunities to like develop it or even to see what was there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I joined the military at the time, you couldn't be queer in the military, and so that was, an obstacle. And when I was finally like feeling that out, I was like maybe like 16, 17. And then I joined the military at 17. So there wasn't a lot of space to
Mhm.
like have a girlfriend or, anything like that. Then I joined the military, and, that wasn't an environment that, it was, you know, capable to really like freely express my or explore my sexuality. There were definitely people that did it, but it was very under wraps. It just wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a free space.
Yeah.
And then I got saved, and that was about 10 years of my life. And so then, homosexuality was seen as a sin.
Right.
And in the process of that, time period is when I met and monogamously married my husband.
Sure.
And for the most part, the relationship, like I said, it was a pretty good relationship overall. Even if we weren't compatible, it wasn't like a horrible 16 years by any stretch of the word. And but I did have periods where I'm like, okay, but I still feel this strong drive, to have these queer interactions, and be with women, and that kind of thing. And so that never really went away. And I definitely had some periods where like I was definitely engaging in unfaithful behavior around my queerness.
Okay.
But it was because I was like, I have this like kind of itch that I need to scratch, and I never got a chance to scratch it.
Yeah.
And now I'm in this monogamous marriage with this man
And you're saved.
that doesn't allow, huh?
I said, and you were saved, trying to
And I was
walk them
saved,
straight and
but
narrow.
that burned off. Like, like
Like that ain't last. We couldn't
that
do
didn't
that.
last. Those were like the first few years of our marriage, and then we both kind of, that was maybe about the first maybe like 10 years, and then
That's
it
a long
burned
time.
off.
Oh.
And it is a long time. It is a long time. But it burned off. And then and so then I'm like, okay, like I have this sexuality that hasn't really been addressed. And hang on a sec, there's a bus going by, it's really loud. Okay, sorry. So there's like this like, sexuality that I'm having, and it's not going away, and in some respects it's getting stronger. And so I would like sneak and like watch like the L Word and like all this like weird stuff.
Yeah.
And I even hooked up with a couple of women who were all in the same position that I was. They were monogamously in relationships with men, but they had these like burgeoning sexualities that they like couldn't ignore, and so they wanted to get the opportunity to kind of explore and see what that would be like. But we were all cheating,
Y'all were on the DL?
because we was all, yes. Listen, DL woman is real. It is. It's real. And so, and at that time, it was Craigslist, and so you would go on Craigslist, and like there'd be all these like ads. Yeah, for women that were like looking for the same thing. Essentially, it's like, hey, I have this sexuality that I haven't really fleshed out. Can we help each other out? And so I had a couple of instances, some situations with that. And we my son got sick. So one of my sons was diagnosed with brain cancer when he was 6. He's fine now. And life was just really fucking hard. It was really hard. It was really rough. We had left the church at this point. And like we started non-monogamy with swinging. Mostly because I wanted to get the chance to have sexual experiences with women. And my my spouse at the time had a lot of like sexual like hang-ups, and I was like, dude, you gotta loosen up. Like I was like, you gotta loosen up. So and life was really hard. We were like, life sucks right now. We're dealing with this pediatric cancer. And so we were like, okay, we're gonna like, try to go to, I don't know, Nevada and go to one of the, brothels.
Yeah.
And see if we can have a threesome, but it was like super expensive. And so we were like, okay, we can't afford that. And then like we went to, I remember like one of the things that we did in the beginning was we went to the strip club together for like Valentine's Day. We was like tax time balling, and so we were like, all right, we're going to use our little tax return and, go make it rain at the strip club.
Yeah.
And I just remember like just not feeling a lot of stuff, when he was getting a lap dance. Like it was just like, oh, like, okay, because he was like right next to me and he was getting a lap dance. And I was like, oh, this really isn't that bad.
Right.
And then we went to a swinger party. And I found out one on Meetup randomly and was like, hey, let's go. We didn't know anybody there. Like now that I look back on all this stuff, I'm like, man, this was some wild shit, because we didn't have any like conversations where we like sat down with each other and was like, hey, I want to do this. Do you want to do this? Let's intentionally map this out. Like, no, like we were just like grabbing at shit, as it came for it, for us. And a lot of it was about me wanting to explore my sexuality.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I do feel like it was helpful for us because neither one was dragging the other person along. Like it wasn't like one person sat one person down and was like, hey, I want to do this. And the other person was like, I really don't want to do this, but I don't want to lose this relationship. So let me try it. We sort of evolved to the place of becoming non-monogamous. It was very much an evolution. Yeah, it was like this little thing happened here and we took a chance, and this little thing here and we were like, yeah, let's try this out. Let's do this thing. And a
Yeah.
lot of it was around me wanting to explore my sexuality. And so we started first with like, me not being able to be with men. We had an OPP for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because I didn't fight a lot with him to get rid of that. Like we threw that out like the first sex party that we went to. So like literally like we were there. The idea was that I wasn't supposed to interact with men. It was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a couple of like stipulations. Like, so the rules were no men for me, no kissing for either of us, I think. And then he was not allowed to give any other woman oral sex. That was the rules
Okay.
that we went into. We threw them all out by the end of the night. None of them. None of them. And I tell people all the time now when I'm coaching, I'm like, do not do that. I do not recommend that at all.
No
It
comment.
worked for us, but that was not a great idea. I promise you it was not a great idea.
Oh my goodness.
But
That's
like
so
that's kind of
common.
how it happened. It was a lot of
Yeah.
it was around me wanting to explore my queerness. And so then we started with swinging. Swing worked very well for me. I'm a absolute slut, total hedonist when it comes to sex. I like having lots of sex with lots of people
Mm-hmm.
as often as I possibly can. And I don't even need to know your first name most of the time. Like, like I'm like, look, like, what I mean? You like me, we can do this, cool. But my husband was not that way. He wasn't like that. It was very hard for him. Swinging was challenging for him.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that he's far, far, far more demisexual. And I even think I asked him recently, like, I was like, would you categorize yourself as a demisexual? And I think he said, yeah. So swinging was really hard for him. Recreational sex was super hard for him.
Was it
And
hard for him watching
so
you? Was it hard for him like watching you navigate it so well and so easily and so
honestly,
sluttily?
probably there probably was some challenge for him, but he wasn't the most emotional person in the world. He's very
Okay.
logical. So even if he did have challenging emotions, they didn't come this way a lot. Like, you know what I mean? He was very much an internal processor. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he had some struggle and some challenge for sure. And I know that there were times where there was, but
Yeah.
not to the extent to where it was like marring our experience and like some other like, people that I know,
Sure.
and talk to. Like it wasn't like even like with the me being with men, I remember that being like a conversation and me being like, hey, there's this guy, I want to hook up with him. And literally he was like, okay, well, you got to release the whole, the bars. And like, all right, fine. And then that was kind of it. And then
Yeah.
we kind of moved on. And so yeah, but I do think that he did experience some challenge in the swinger space being very easy, for me to navigate through, and him it was kind of like a struggle. And so I
Right.
do think that there was some challenge there. And so how we even found out about polyamory was at a swinger party. We went to a swinger party.
Very
And we
common.
had this like group of swinger friends that we would swing with all the time. And they would have parties at their house, and so we would go. So we kind of knew each other. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, we was like, oh, these were like the homies. And some
Yeah.
people came in, and this woman came in with her boyfriend, and her husband came in later.
Okay.
And they were both fussing at her about drinking too much or something like that. And she made this statement. She was like, oh my God, my husband told on me to my boyfriend, and they kind of like chuckled about it. And it like blew our minds. Like we were like,
Mm.
whoa, like what the hell is this? Because at that point
Right.
we hadn't seen that. It was mostly just people swinging.
Right.
And it was very appealing to my ex-husband in a way that it wasn't initially to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wanted the opportunity to form actual like bonds with people because he
Mm-hmm.
needed that
Mm-hmm.
in order to like want to feel safe to be sexual with a person. Like he needed a lot more than I did.
Mm-hmm.
So polyamory was a lot more appealing to him than it was to me. I very much felt like sex. My philosophy at that time was sex is a bodily function, like sweating, going to the bathroom, eating. It's something that we do, like animals do it. Like I mean, this is just something that we do as like biological creatures on the earth.
Right.
And it didn't have a lot of like metaphysical sort of stuff attached to it for me. And so, to me, your body is a shell, and him sharing his shell with other people like really didn't, it didn't really impact me a lot, but like things like his regard, his affection, his emotions, his care, like that stuff to me
That
was
hurt
like
a little.
sacred. And
Mhm.
I didn't want to share that with anyone else. I wanted that
Right.
to be all mine. So the thought of him like developing actual emotional bonds with people was very, very scary for me. So, but I was like, okay, this is what he wants to do. Let's try this out.
Okay.
We went on a couple of dates. It was very volatile. I wasn't ready. And so we tabled it for about 6 months. And then we returned back to it once again about my queerness because I wanted the opportunity to have romantic relationships with women. And up until this point, swinging only afforded me the opportunity to have sex.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to actually be able to develop like a bond, with a woman in a way that I couldn't before. So we opened back up to, pursuing, polyamory, but very much with the understanding that like he was gonna find his own girl, I was gonna find my own girl, because I was like, there ain't no way that we gonna find a girl that we both like because we have such different tastes.
Yeah.
And then randomly met a girl at a party, and she became our partner for 2 years. And that was our foray into polyamory. And then once that relationship was over, it was just like, okay, this is what we're doing now. And
Wow.
we were non-monogamous. So that happened in 2000. We started swinging in 2013. We met that partner in 2014. That relationship ended in 2016, and then from 2016 on until we broke up, we were just non-monogamous, and we've had various relationship configurations throughout the course of that time.
We're excited to announce our course and coaching program, Relationship Bliss, where we help polyamorous people transform their relationships into highly compatible, peaceful, deeply aligned, and blissful partnerships.
We do this by sharing techniques for effective communication, deeper connection, and conflict resolution. The program offers a self-paced course with 5 learning modules, 25 training videos, and live virtual coaching sessions with us, Shani and Sunjata.
Learn more at go-growdialogue.com. How does this how does this translate, or do you get pushback from your family, your friends? Like, what about the people who knew you monogamously married? Like, do they know about your polyamorous life? Like, how do you navigate that?
We never hit it. So we never had a period where we didn't tell anyone, including the kids. We had a brief period where they didn't know, but our partner would come over to our house a lot, and the way she interacted with us. I have a thing about children that I think we do as adults. We insult their intelligence so much
Yeah.
as adults in a way that I don't. I've never wanted to exist in a space where my children felt like I insulted their intelligence.
Yeah.
And so once it kind of became apparent to me that like I'm like, this doesn't look like typical friendship that they've seen mommy and daddy having, I was like, we need to say something to them. And so we did. But we never hid it. We never hid it from our families. We never hid it from our friends.
Yeah.
I, for the most part, didn't receive a lot of pushback about it. My husband experienced a little bit more just because his family's a lot more conservative than mine is.
Mhm.
My mom is queer. And she's been queer for a large portion of my life, since I was 14 when she came out.
Okay.
And so she definitely understands alternative relationships, even though she is incredibly monogamous. And so I definitely know that my non-monogamy makes her uncomfortable.
Okay.
But she's never like pushed back on it, because she's
Yeah.
very live and let live in terms of relationships. My dad actually called me and congratulated me. So he was like, oh my God, because it turns out, seriously, turns out that like him and my mom dabbled when they were younger. And so I like found out all of this stuff
That's where it is
that I
always
was like
comes out.
childhood ruined, at this point, because I like learned all of these things that like I did not know, and it connected some interesting dots for
Oh
me.
my
And I was just like, oh
gosh,
my
I
God.
know
Like I was just
so
like,
many non-monogamous people with a similar story to that. Like, that's
yes,
so
yeah.
funny
So
to
my
me.
dad was very like, appreciative until my marriage ended, and then he kind of, fell into some other stuff. And I was just like, dude, I just don't have time for that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but his family was a lot more pushback. But even then, they still were respectful. So like they had met our other partner, like, because we were together for 2 years, and she was very much like, like a
Yeah.
parent, to our kids. Like, it was a family. So
Yeah.
they had met
Long
her
time.
and interacted with her. Yeah. And our friends, were just kind of like, okay, most of my friends kind of know me that I'm gonna do what I want, So it's like, Vita's a wild child. They know that I'm gonna kind of do what I want, and so I didn't receive a ton of like pushback to where I like lost people,
Okay.
or some of the other things that I know some people have experienced. Like that wasn't my experience, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the most that we got was a little ire from his family, and like I said,
Right.
I definitely know that it made my mom uncomfortable, and then I definitely know that some family members kind of felt like, well, see, that's why they broke up. If they wouldn't have did that non-monogamy
Of
thing, they
course.
probably
Of
wouldn't broke up.
course.
But
Of
yeah, that stuff, I'm just like, oh my god, like I know that that's not the case, and so I
Yeah.
Yeah.
just go, yeah, okay,
And
sure,
that's all that matters. So
right.
so let's transition into some of your current relationship dynamics. And within our world, we have all these titles like solo poly, RA, hierarchy based, egalitarian, etc. How do you identify?
Um, I largely identify as just non-monogamous. And so I just tell people that, I don't enter into any romantic relationships where there's any expectation of any kind of exclusivity. And so I just identify mostly as non-monogamous. I do practice egalitarian polyamory, so I don't tend to want to participate in hierarchical dynamics.
Okay.
I don't judge them, which I know there's a lot of judgment for the non-monogamous community. Personally, I don't judge them. They're
Right.
just not for me.
Right.
I feel like in the right context and with the right tools, they can work for the people who want those things. That just is not, what I want.
Sure.
And so I consider myself egalitarian. I feel like in the latter portion of my journey, I probably would appear very relationship anarchy,
Okay.
So in that I have a lot of not neatly defined, relationship spaces, and I'm comfortable in that. Them not being neatly defined and being like, like I said, and I feel like now in this portion of my life, I'm a little less concerned with what I'm calling a person and more concerned with, are we doing the things that we genuinely want to do with one another?
Right.
And that feels better to me than being like, well, are we a thing? Are we this? Are we that? It's
Yeah.
more like, are we doing what we want to do?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of land on, I just have people in my life that are significant to me, and every significance doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
So with some people I'm significant and we're sexual and we're romantic. With some people they're significant and it's very romantic, but it's not particularly sexual. With some people
Right.
it's not romantic and or sexual, but
Yep.
they're still very significant to me.
Yep.
And so that's just kind of where I'm at right now. Is just like I have people in my life that are significant to me. I do have, a partner, but that was very much that we decided that that's what we wanted to do with each other, but everyone else is just, this is a significant person to me. And that's
Okay.
kind of all that I need to know, and that's all you need to know.
Right.
That really resonates for me too. So very much felt that
Yeah.
so much.
So the next thing I want to talk about is your online presence. So one of the things that I appreciate about getting to know Evita over the years, and I was fortunate enough to meet Evita through the Poly Black and Dating Facebook group that you all, if you follow this show, you've heard that about that Facebook group many a times. And I met Evita through that community of folks when Evita came to town for different events over the years. And then also I've been fortunate enough to follow Evita through Facebook and Instagram Lavita Loca 34. We'll include that in the show notes. But Evita does a lot of her activism and her coaching and teaching through posts that
Mostly just share her experiences. Like a lot of times I feel like your post will be like, I recently encountered this feeling and I want to tell y'all how I dealt with it, and just like you approach things from like a very personal place. I
yes,
always say you drop some gems because you do these little carousels, which just really sum things up very concisely, very like, in a box, but not really. It's like, yes, that's what I've been feeling. Thank you for giving me the words for it. So
yeah. And
I always appreciate them.
I want to name that one of the gems that those of us who follow is that we get like Evita shares her life journey very vulnerably and transparently, not only the highlights, but also the lowlights, and uses those as like teaching points for those of us who follow. And I've been able to gain so many, insights through all that work, Evita. And I wanted to ask, like, how'd you get on that path? And you have such a large, approaching 55,000 followers on IG, many more thousands of followers on Facebook. How did you start that path and why?
Um, Really, it started in the polyamory groups. I would make posts where I would talk about my experiences. And I remember actually the first time I made a post in a group. I'll never forget it. And it wasn't Poly Black and Dating, it was another group
Mhm.
for Black polyamorous people. And at the time we were in the triad. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Our kids had 1 bedroom. We had the other bedroom. And our bed wasn't big enough for the three of us to sleep in it. It was like a queen size. It was just, it's hot. Okay. Ain't nobody trying to be like, I like, pile in this bed. So
Mhm.
we decided to develop a rotation schedule for when she was there so that we didn't like force her to have to be the person that slept on the couch every time she came over to the house because it was our house.
Yeah.
So we had this rotation schedule. So on the nights when she would come and stay with us, we would sleep on we would rotate who slept on the couch.
Mhm.
And everybody got a turn. Okay. So nobody got to opt out.
Mhm.
And so on my nights when I would sleep on the couch, I would really struggle because I could hear them in the room having solo sex with each other,
Mhm.
while I wasn't present. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. There isn't. They should have had a solo sex life that did not include me. I didn't necessarily want to hear it. And especially as a baby poly, who was like literally just now getting used to like even now, having done this for 10 years, one of the things I love about living alone is that I am just not privy to anything that my partners are doing sexually with anybody else. Okay. Because I live in my house, they live in
Mhm.
theirs, they do
Yeah.
that in their house, and they don't do it in my house. So, and I've been doing this for 11 years, I literally have, been in rooms watching my partners have sex with other people, still just was not a fan. So I made a post about, is it okay for me to ask them on the nights when they're in the room by themselves if they could keep it down? Which is a very normal, reasonable thing for a new person to polyamory to
Yeah.
ask about.
Yeah.
Very normal.
Indeed.
They jumped on me so bad in that group, I cried
Oh
because they
man.
were just like, you're controlling, you're trying to limit their self expression.
Oh no.
You're immature. Are you even really poly? I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible. That said, that doesn't sound poly to me. It was terrible. And so, I was just like, I'm having these hard feelings. I just wanted some support. And
Mm.
even if you really felt that way, if you're like, hey, like this actually isn't a thing to ask a person, which is debatable, okay?
Facts.
Debatable. Because there are some
Facts.
people that are like, girl, that is your house. You should not be uncomfortable in your home.
Yeah.
And that's not an unreasonable request. So reasonable is relative. And people act like reasonable is not. Reasonable is relative.
Facts.
So but there's a way that you can communicate that without like, like just jumping down someone's throat. But as we all know, in those groups, people just, some about being that the anonymity of a screen just makes
Mhm.
people interact with people in ways that they absolutely would never do if they
Mhm.
were sitting across from someone watching the impact that their words and the things that they're saying is having on this person in real time.
Yeah.
So anyways, they jump all over me about this post and now I'm feeling like crap. But after a while, I kept posting and I was like, no, like, and I started to kind of stand up for my feelings and go, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel these things. And so a lot of my posting was trying to get a witness. And then also, I find the things that I learn about myself through processing these challenging non-monogamy so fascinating. It is fascinating to me. Like, I'm just like, yo, so I love talking to people about it because I'm like,
Yeah.
let me tell you this new thing that I learned about myself because of this situation that happened, how
Right.
I processed through it. And people started inboxing me and going, oh my God, I'm so glad you talked about that.
Mm.
I was feeling that the other day, but I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want anybody to like, so I was like, oh, okay, so it is people out here going through this stuff. It ain't just me. You
Right, right.
know? And so then I started posting more, I started talking more, I started resonating with people more. And so I created like a Facebook page just because I was like, okay, let me just, move this stuff over here. So I'm not posting on my personal page all the time about this. And then the pandemic hit. And by that time, I had presented a couple conferences. I'd done like a few podcasts and stuff. And so I was kind of known for just being Black and a woman and vocal,
Okay.
about the fact that I was non-monogamous and very open about it.
Mhm.
But the pandemic hit, and I got this idea to where I was like, let me see if I can come up with like a daily polyamory, like snippet of wisdom or like a reminder, and see if I can, make 365 of these,
Okay.
and then I can kind of compile it. And so that's how that started. And because everybody was in the house because it was a
Yeah.
pandemic,
Yeah.
that's when it really exploded. I feel like is
Okay.
when polyamory like really like got its like meteoric rise was
Okay.
during the pandemic, because I think a lot of people were just questioning everything, relationships. So many people got divorced, so many people,
Yeah.
because of the pandemic hit. And I think it like really kind of made people go, life is short,
Yeah.
what really matters,
Hmm.
and why do I want to continue to be in relationships that just that are not satisfying, they're not fulfilling, they don't reflect my genuine wants and desires. And so polyamory sort of it became like it got a makeover, like you feel like at that time, and it became an it girl.
Okay.
And so yeah, and so people were very hungry,
Yeah.
for polyamory education, for polyamory wisdom, for people that were doing this. And so then that's when my social media kind of took off, and then from that point, now here we are.
Yeah. And it led to a book with those
Yeah, and it did.
365
Devotional method.
devotional messages that we have on our bookshelf here.
Yep.
And
Yay, I
can
love
you,
that.
can you tell the audience the name of the book?
Yeah, it's called a polyamory devotional, 365 daily reflections for the consensually non-monogamous.
And where can they find it?
You can get it at all major retailers. You can get it at your local bookstore, which I would, very much appreciate people doing. Support your local bookstore.
Mhm.
They have it at bookshop.org. You can also get it through Thorn Apple Press, which is the publisher. They have a link to where you can order it. And so yeah, so it's in multiple outlets, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll definitely, again, we'll post that in the show notes as well. Um, yeah, you have any questions about the social media stuff before we move on? Okay. And I know that you also, that has also led to like coaching opportunities, like you said, speaking on different panels and things like that. Anything that people should be looking out for that's coming up?
Yeah, so if you follow me on Instagram, that's why I do most of my updating of like my movements and what's going on. I am doing a panel discussion for Non-Monogamy Visibility Week on July 9th. And so I'm looking forward to that. It'll be quite a few people in the Black polyamory community. And so it should be a great discussion. I'm also going to be doing a workshop on with several creators, so Jess from Remodeled Love, Chill Polyamory, I think Shanae, is also going to be a part of it. And it is called um like mistakes I've made. So we're each going to like talk about like a big mistake that we made early in our journey and like how we grew from making that mistake. So I'm really looking forward to that actually, because
Nice,
I love to
nice.
talk about like one thing Shanae always says, play as fuck up. So and so
Indeed.
I love talking about, I love humanizing myself in a way of being like, hey, I'm not this guru that
Mhm.
just arrived to this and was just from the gate, it just all made sense and I just responded well. Like a lot of these wisdoms came from the school of the hard knocks and
Yes.
making the wrong choices and learning from those mistakes. And
Yeah,
now going here, let me share this information with you so I can save you some of the heartache that I went through and some of the
indeed.
damage that I put my relationships through because of the things I'm doing. And so that's coming up. We haven't finalized the date for that, but if you go to my page and kind of just stay following, you'll see
Okay.
some of that. And then I am presenting at a conference in September in Portland called Polytopia. And this will be my second time actually presenting for Polytopia. So I'm also looking forward to that and going back to that community as well. So yeah, so on my social media is where you'll be able to see, the different things that I'm doing at different times.
Love it. At Lavitaloca 34.
Definitely recommend you follow, especially those of you who are like trying to get into polyamory and you might be having the feels. I have gotten so many gems, so many. So I strongly recommend following.
Yes.
And now you're talking about mistakes you've made. I'm sure you have a few sunshine and rainbow stories.
Yeah, so we have this segment, right, that we call, that's a play on our show name, Sunshine and Rainbows, called Sunshine and Rainbows Story. So we want to ask you, what's your Sunshine and Rainbows story, which is a time in your polyamory journey or non-monogamy journey when you endured some challenges, that's the rain, and then later on, after some time had passed and things improved, you gained some perspective. That's the sunshine. And you were able to
Mm.
recognize the lessons or area of growth. That's the rainbow. You got a quick story you could tell like that?
Yeah. So what's coming forward for me is I remember when I was still married and it was during the pandemic. Um, my ex-husband at the time, we were together still. He had a life insurance policy. And so we're married, we have kids. And so naturally, I'm just like, okay, you have this life insurance policy, it's all going to go to me, because I have to take care of these children if God forbid, something happened to you. And I found out that, I mean, he told me, it wasn't like I discovered it, but he told me that he changed his life insurance policy to make one of his partners at the time the beneficiary of some of the money.
Mhm.
And he had been with this partner for some years, like, so it wasn't like some person he had just met 2 months ago. And she and I had a great relationship. We loved one another very much. She was like my first experience with like really like enjoying a metamor.
Mhm.
And so, but even still, it was really, really challenging for me to hear him say, "I'm going to leave some of this money that I felt like belonged to me as his wife and the mother of his children
Right.
to this other person." And they didn't. I'm like, y'all don't have finances together. Y'all don't have children together. Like, it's going to be a much, much, much different, experience for them. If you die, than if for them, than it will be for me.
Mhm.
And so I really, really struggled with this. I really did. And fortunately, I had developed enough like emotional wherewithal to like not crash out, because I definitely had a lot of crash outs in the earlier stages of my journey when I had challenge.
Yeah.
But this one, by that time, I had done some emotional work, and so I didn't really crash out. But I had to shut down for like 24 hours. I think I didn't talk to him for like an entire day. Like I was just like, oh, boom, just not talking. I'm just not. I don't trust anything that'll come out of my mouth right now, and so I just need to just shut it down.
Mhm.
I gave myself the space to sort of just, withdraw and draw into myself. And then the next day we talked about it. We had a conversation about it. He explained his reasoning. Um, and and I was like, okay, and then we kind of moved on. And I felt like that unlocked like a new like frontier of me sort of seeing him as a separate independent person. Um, and I was very grateful at like how it was handled. Because like I said in the past, that would not have gone over well. There would have been a lot of screaming, like just a lot of yelling, just a lot of me, being
Yeah.
very histrionic about it. I was, I was proud of myself and like how I showed up to it. I was also proud of how maturely we like handled the conversation when we did come back together and talk. And then also, how moving forward, like I said, it unlocked like a new like arena of me being able to hold the people that I was in relationships with, with more like a respect, for their autonomy.
Right.
And very much kind of like being like, okay, Vita, like, yeah, we can argue about this, and you can go back and forth about whether or not he was wrong or right, or, some people are like, that he shouldn't have done it. Some people are like, yeah, he should have. That to me, I don't super care.
Mhm.
It was his policy to do with what he wanted to do, and that's what he chose to do with it. And I, my principle ultimately is to want to respect, his genuine desires, And I felt like that was a moment where, I demonstrated that I could do that, even when it was really, really challenging, for me to do it, that I did possess the ability to be able to do what I needed to do and take care of myself so that I was able to show up in alignment with my principles about how I want to be in relationships with people and how I want to hold the people in my life in relationship with me. And so yeah, and so that's the story, that kind of
Yeah,
came forward
that's
for
a
me
that's a
in
that
terms of
is a
that.
great
Yeah.
story, great example. And one of the things you said that has been so true for me is if it's one thing that this non-monogamous and polyamory journey is going to do, is going to challenge us to remain accountable to who we say we are and our values. We're going to get so many chances to to be to be proven, to be held accountable in all the ways.
True.
Oh, and it doesn't stop. Like you never arrive.
Never
So like
arrive.
you never get to a place to where it's like, okay,
This
I've
is easy.
chased every dog, whatever, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Now I'm here and I'm just
Nah.
coasting.
Oh my goodness.
No, like I have my little coast moments where I'm like, we're doing good. And then I'll have these moments where I'm just
And
like,
then boom.
oh, there's still challenge, there's still stuff,
Facts.
there's still ways that I'm having to hold myself accountable to who I say I want to be to the people in my
Facts.
life. And man, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I knocked that out the park. And then sometimes I'm like, ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
this one's gonna be rough.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Relatable.
Thank
So
you
relatable.
so much, Evita. This has been so much fun. So many nuggets, so many gems. And
You're so funny.
yes, yes, it's
Thank
so many
you.
good laughs. So I'm excited that you carved out some time to share with our audience. So just wanted to say thank you and wishing you all the best as your journey continues.
Thank
Yes.
you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having me. This was
much.
a great conversation. I love talking to you. It felt so natural. So
Yay.
I enjoyed this time immensely. Thank you so much.
No
Yay.
doubt, no doubt. And for all of our listeners and those of you who are watching this on YouTube, thank you for being with us once again. We hope you enjoyed these insights. We hope that you got some nuggets that you could take forward with you as you continue to explore or live this non-monogamous and polyamory journey. So as always, until next time, we love y'all. Peace. That's a wrap for this episode of Sunshine and Rainbows. We hope today's conversation sparked some new insights, deep reflections, or just gave you a fresh perspective on love and connection.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop us a comment, send us your questions, or share your own experiences. We might even feature them in a future episode.
And don't forget to subscribe to Sunshine and Rainbows on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you're vibing with us, please like, comment, share, and leave a review. It helps others find the show and keeps these conversations going.
Want more sunshine and rainbows? Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Sunshine Rainbows for daily insights, behind the scenes moments, and updates on future episodes. You can get more in depth and intellectual with us on our Substack, sustainablesolutionsmedia.com. If you like what we're saying over there, consider becoming a paid subscriber to support all our liberation and anti-oppression efforts.
As always, thank you for rocking with us. We so appreciate the love and support. Until next time, we love y'all. Peace.